the previous video on multidimensional arrays, we looked at how we can use a two-dimensional array for a data structure in which we would want multiple fields or columns, maybe of a table. And so each record being a row of the table, and then I have a column for last name, first name, maybe 3 test scores in the case of a grade book, and then this true or false Boolean expression refers to whether the student is a major, a CIS major, or not. One problem with two-dimensional arrays or any type of multidimensional array is that every field has to be the same data type. So I can create a multidimensional or two-dimensional array that is of type string, and I'd have to treat the numbers here as string data and then do the conversions whenever I want to maybe sum up the values or find the average. A better way to do this is using something called a structure. And so what I've done is created just a simple form with a button. And let's look at the code here. At the top of my form, I created a structure. And I named the structure student. I could have named it anything I want. And traditionally, unlike variables, structures have a beginning uppercase letter and end with an end structure. And then inside that structure, I can dim a bunch of variables. So here I have last name is string, first name is string, score 1, score 2, and score 3 is single, and CIS major is Boolean. And this allows me to create a data structure with multiple data types, and I can then use that structure in an array. So here I've created an array called gradebook that is initialized as having just one element, element 0. And it's of type student. So it's going to use this data structure. Now when I click the retrieve button, we're going to use a stream reader object to open that text file I just showed you called gradebook.txt, and I'm going to use my while loop seeking to the end of the text file. I'm going to call a method called add new record, and I'm going to pass it that line that I'm reading. So let's take a look at the add new record. So here in add new record, I'm creating another temporary array called temp array, which is going to be this type string. It's going to hold 7 values. I've got a variable I that's going to be the length of my gradebook array, which right now is basically 1. And then I'm going to take XYZ, which is that read line that I'm passing from my retrieve button. So it's a string value. I'm going to take it and I'm going to split it based on the commas. Now remember that data file was comma delimited. So what the split method does, it's going to take each of those items, comma delimited, and put them into the elements of my array called temp array. Remember, these are all strings at this point. Then I'm going to resize my array gradebook by adding 1 to it. Alternatively, in VB, I could use the redim statement. I've commented that out. And then gradebook sub I, so whatever I is, going to start out as 0. The dot last name, so we use a dot notation structure to refer to our structure elements. So gradebook sub I, gradebook sub 0, dot last name equals the 0 element of temp array, and I'm going to trim any spaces before or after that. Do the same thing for first name, score 1, score 2, score 3, and CIS major. And I'm converting score 1, score 2, score 3 to integers before I place them into my structure. And I'm converting my temp array element 5 to a Boolean structure. Once it's gone through all the records in our retrieve button handler and populated the array, it's going to sort the gradebook. And I just have a little routine here that sorts the gradebook. We can't use array.sort for an array of structure, so I've written a bubble sort that we saw in a previous video to sort my structure. And here I've got a temp variable of type student, and I can simply convert one array item into student all at the same time. I don't have to break out all the different little variables from that structure. So I can do one structure at a time. Having done that, then I've got another method here called show major records. I'm going to call this method. And all this method is doing is splitting out into two strings, the students who are CIS majors and those who are not. And if I run this, you'll see the result. So when I retrieve the data, there's my report. So it retrieved the CIS majors and separated them out from the non-majors. You can pause the video and look at that code a little bit closer if you like. All I'm doing is using a for loop going through the gradebook, each time looking to see if they are a major or not, and then adding them either to a major string or a non-major string, and then I use those strings in my prompt, which I'm concatenating and putting that into a message box. Let's take a look at the C# side. So here's the same project in C#, and here's my structure. In C# we use the keyword struct, and I have named it as student, and then I've declared the same variables, last name and first name as string, score 1, score 2, and score 3 as float, and then CIS major as Boolean. The reason I did float here was you could have a half score. Maybe a student got 75 and a half on a score. Then we create an array of type student called gradebook. It's going to have one element in it. And the same thing I did before, I'm going to open a stream reader, read in that gradebook.txt, and use a while loop to read in one line at a time and pass that to a method called add new record. So here's the add new record method. I'm passing it, or it's receiving XYZ, that's the read line string, creating a variable called temp array. It's a string array, going to have 6 elements, and I'm going to get where the length is of gradebook. I'm going to place that string, I'm going to place that comma delimited string, splitting it out by the commas into my temp array. I'm going to resize gradebook, adding an element to it, and then I'm going to populate gradebook sub I dot last name, dot first name, dot score 1, dot score 2, dot score 3, and dot CIS major by the values that are in the temp array. And I'm going to trim the last name and first name because there's any spaces. I'm going to convert the score values into floats and convert the CIS major into a Boolean value. Once it's read in all those records, we're going to close our file. We're going to sort the gradebook using a bubble sort. And again, I just have a temp variable called temp student of type student. That's our structure. In the bubble sort, I can simply pass one element into temp student. It's going to grab all 6 of those data items, and I don't have to parse it out each item at a time. It just does it all at once. It makes swapping really easy. Once we've sorted it, so I'm sorting alphabetically here by last name, and then a secondary sort by first name. And then we're going to show major record. And all I'm doing there is reading through the array. And if the student is a major or not, I'm going to put them in a string called majors. If they're not, I'm going to put them into a string called non-majors. I'm going to use that in my prompt and then show that in the message box. Once again, let me run this. And there is our report. CIS majors listed alphabetically from A through Z, non-majors listed alphabetically A through Z.